Right. Okay. Homeostasis and body fluid. Dr. Nivartana, she will join with you in a while. Right. So until she join, I'll just brief what is it. So today is the second physiology lecture. You are going to have it. So conducted by Dr. Nivartana, one of our junior colleagues. She's the first batch from the Moratuwa University, Wayamba University. Now she works as a demonstrator in Moratuwa University. Right. So that she'll talk today homeostasis and body fluid, and three type of things. Body fluids that we categorize into three: intracellular, extracellular, and also extracellular we are categorized fluid outside cells and interstitial fluid ECF between cells and tissues. Right? Technically, body fluid we are dividing into two main ICF and ECF. ECF we are dividing into two. Right? So then body fluid compartments. So we call TBW. So if you take 70 kilogram male, so normally if you ask about my weight, so I'm about 65. So normally I may have about 40 or 38, 39 amount of water, right? That means I have, everyone have lot of water content.
Our topic is homeostasis and body fluids. In previous week's session, we briefly talk about what uh, in previous session we briefly talk about what are body fluids and why do we need homeostasis. In this session, we are going to talk more detail about body fluids and their content and how they help in our homeostasis process. Okay. Uh, so can we go? Okay. Uh, So, in homeostasis, maintaining the volume and composition of body fluid is a very important thing. So, basically, we define body fluids as dilute watery solutions. They contain dissolved chemicals inside or outside the cell. So, basically, we classify body fluids as intracellular, extracellular fluids. Intracellular fluids is the one fluids within the cells. Extracellular fluids are the one fluid outside the cell. And for extracellular ones, they contain also interstitial fluid. Uh, when we take a normal person, we take as 70 kilogram person. Uh, it is the normal rate we use for our physiology calculations. So, in 70 kilogram person, we take total body water as 42 liters. So, uh, So we take that 42. It depends on the age and sex. So it depends on the age and sex. The total body content of the person changes. So usually extracellular fluid is about 14 liters and intracellular fluid is about 28 liters. So we can subdivide these fluids into interstitial, intravascular, and transcellular ones. So transcellular ones are the ones which contains uh, within near the organs like peritoneal fluid, like that. So interstitial fluid is about 10 liters and intravascular fluid is about 3.5 liters. Okay. Uh, I'll send you some images. These images are not included in this presentation. Okay. Uh, as I told you previously, body fluids depend on the body fat amount. So, in infant, it is usually about 80% body weight contains the water, and in average male adult, it contains about 60%. And in average female adults, it is usually less. It is about 50%. And in old age, the water content is decreased and it is about 45%. And according to the climate level, physical activity, age, sex, it affects the body fat content, and it affects the body water content of a person. Okay. This is an image. So in a newborn infant, it is usually about 80%. You just have to roughly remember that amount. An adult male about 60%, an adult female it's about adult male about 60%, adult female is about 50%, and in old age it is 45% because in old age the fat mass is reduced and they are easily dehydrated. This is also a diagram to understand better. So in average female, it is usually about 55% fluids and 45% solids. Okay, but in a male, it is 60% fluid and 40% are solids. Okay. We talk about what is intracellular fluid and extracellular fluid. So we need to know about their content. Okay. So in extracellular fluids, it's mostly abundant cation is sodium plus. So anion is chloride. So you have to remember sodium chloride. It is mostly abundant in the extracellular fluid, but in intracellular fluid within the cells, it is mostly abundant anion is potassium, and they contain anion proteins and lipophosphates. So for this and cation and anion balances, sodium potassium pump plays a major role. In future sessions, we are going to talk about what is sodium potassium pump and how it works like that. In this session, we are going to talk about the composition of body fluids and how they maintain our homeostasis. Okay, don't get confused about sodium potassium pump because we are going to talk more details in future sessions. Okay. So this is the ion distribution. In extracellular fluid, mostly abundant is sodium, but in intracellular it is potassium. And in extracellular fluids, they are mostly abundant chloride and bicarbonate, but in intracellular one, phosphate. Proteins are usually abundant in both extracellular and intracellular ones. And in next graph, I also added electrolyte and protein and ion concentration in different fluids like blood plasma, interstitial fluid. You just have to go roughly, but you don't have to remember the amount and that things. Okay. So we are going to talk about sodium. As I told you previously, it's the most abundant ion in extracellular fluid, and 90 it is about 90% of extracellular cations, and it plays a major role in fluid and electrolyte balance because it accounts for almost half of the osmolarity of extracellular fluid. So the sodium level in blood is controlled by aldosterone and ADH. I think you know about these hormones from A levels. Like in aldosterone, it's act on renal tubules and it increases renal reabsorption. In ADH, if sodium is too low, ADH releases stops like that. And also atrial natriuretic peptide increases renal excretion. Okay. So the next one is chloride. It is the most prevalent anion in extracellular fluids, and it can move relatively easily between extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid because most plasma membranes contain chloride leakage channels. And so because plasma membrane contain chloride leakage channel, it can easily move from extracellular fluid to ICF like that. And chloride amount level in the blood is regulated by ADH. Like it governs extent of water loss in the urine, and it also processes that increase or decrease renal reabsorption of sodium, and it also affect reabsorption of chloride. Okay. So the next anion we are going to talk about is bicarbonate. It is the second most prevalent extracellular anion. So the concentration of bicarbonate increases in blood passing through systemic capillaries by picking up carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide, when it combines with water, it forms carbonic acid, which dissociate and forms bicarbonate anions. And in respiration, it drops in pulmonary capillaries when carbon dioxide is exhaled. So chloride shift help maintain correct balance of anions in ECF and ICF. Okay, and kidneys are the main regulators of blood bicarbonate. Uh, so kidneys can form release and bicarbonate when low excrete excess. Okay. So we are going to talk about next is calcium. It is the most abundant mineral in body because 98% of calcium in adults is skeletal and teeth. So the most calcium contains in bones. So the 98% is in our skeletal system, and it in body fluids mainly, and it's an extracellular cation. So the calcium contributes to hardness of teeth and bones. It maintains the strength, and it plays also important role in blood clotting, neurotransmitter release, muscle tone, and excitability of nerves and muscle tissues. So the usually calcium levels in the blood is regulated by parathyroid hormone. Okay. Uh, it stimulates osteoclast to release calcium from bone. Think you just don't know yet about the osteoclast. In our bone lectures in a skeletal system, we are going to talk about what is osteoclast through anatomy, and in physiology, we are going to talk about how the function of that happens. Okay. Uh, for this session, just remember there are osteoclast in bones, and they release calcium from the bone. Okay, and it also enhances reabsorption from glomerular filtrate. And calcitonin hormone lowers the blood calcium levels. Okay. So our next topic is about phosphate. Like it is about 85% in adults, and it also presents as calcium phosphate salts in bone and teeth. Remaining 15% is like contained in ionized form. They are contained in intracellular anions. This phosphate is act as an important buffer. It acts as an important buffer in body fluids and urine. So the same hormones which regulate the calcium also regulates the phosphate in blood, because usually calcium is in calcium phosphate form. Okay, so parathyroid hormone and calcitriol regulates the phosphate levels in the blood. Okay. Uh, so our next ion is we are going to talk about is magnesium. In adults, about 54% of total body magnesium is part of bone, and it contains as magnesium salt. Remaining 46% contains as in ionized form. It is the second most common intracellular cation. So it is act as a cofactor for certain enzymes and sodium potassium pump. And also magnesium is essential for normal neuromuscular activity. By neuromuscular activity, we mean that we have to transfer a neuron signal from one synapse to other. So for that function, we need magnesium. And for myocardial function, for heart function also, we need magnesium. And the secretion of parathyroid hormone usually depends on the concentration of the magnesium. Okay. Uh, Next one is the potassium. It is the most abundant cation in intracellular fluid, and it plays a key role in establishing resting membrane potential in neurons and muscle fibers. For in neurology module, we are going to talk about how these ions help in synaptic transmission, and how they are going to maintain resting membrane potential, and they send new signals. Okay. in this session, just get a brief idea of potassium helps to maintain resting membrane potential like that. In future sessions, we are going to talk how that function happens. Okay, don't get panicked here. And also, potassium helps maintain normal intracellular fluid volumes, and it also helps regulate pH of body fluids. And potassium is also controlled by aldosterone. So it stimulates principal cells in renal collecting ducts to secrete excess potassium. So there is usually a balance in ions in these fluids, but when there is a alteration in water movements, this ions and water balances get disturbed. So there can be fluid accumulations. This fluid accumulation in interstitial spaces can lead to edema. So edema can be due to any condition that lead to net movement of fluid out of capillaries into interstitial fluid. So edema has, we have to, when we talk about edema, there is a special physiological mechanism. In next week, we are going to talk about how edema happens and what are the different types of edema, what are the different pathophysiologies, like that. Okay. So in here, you just remember that when there is alteration in movements, water movements, edema happens. Okay. Also, potassium is needed for nerve, cardiac, and skeletal functions. So, excess potassium is excreted by kidneys, and potassium imbalance can cause sudden death. Potassium excess means hyperkalemia can lead to sudden death. Okay, it's a medical emergency, and as doctors, you need to know how to manage hyperkalemia.
ඒක පොඩ්ඩක් අපි කියමුද hyperkalemia?
Hyperkalemia.
සිංහලෙන් කැල්සියම් වැඩි වීමනේ. hyper
potassium තියෙනවා
පොටෑසියම් වැඩි වීමනේ hyperkalemia මම දන්න සිංහලෙන්.
දැන් අපේ ලේවල තියෙන ඕන බ්ලඩ් වල තියෙන ඕන පොටෑසියම් ලෙවල් එකක් තියෙනවා. දැන් පොටෑසියම් අයන් එක මේන්ලි අපේ මේ කාඩියක් මසල් කියන්නේ හදවතේ මේ ෆන්ක්ෂන් එකට වැදගත් වෙනවා. දැන් මොනවා හරි එකක් හින්දා ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ බොඩි අයන්ස් වල ඉම්බැලන්ස් එකක් හින්දා පොටෑසියම් ලෙවල් එක තියෙනවට වැඩිය වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට අපි ඒකට කියනවා හයිපර්කැලීමියා. يعني තියෙනවට වැඩිය පොටෑසියම් ලෙවල් එක වැඩි. So when that happens, ඒක cardiac muscles වලට affect කරන හින්දා sudden cardiac death එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Within seconds වගේ medical emergency එකක්. අපි ECG එකක් අරන් ECG එකේ changes වලින් තමයි අපි hyperkalemia එක identify කරගන්නේ. අනේ ඕනේ ડોක්ටර් කෙනෙක්ට ECG එකක් බලපු ගමන් මේ තියෙන hyperkalemia ඒක අඳුරගෙන emergency management එක කරන්න දැනගන්න ඕනේ. ඔයාලට මේ ලෙවල් එකට emergency management එක කරන විදිය ඕනේ නැහැ. ඒ වුණාට potassium level එක වැඩි වෙනවා, we should have managed that as a medical emergency කියලා දැනගන්න ඕනේ.
Right, thank you. We'll continue.
So next one is calcium. So it is essential for neuromuscular transmission, cell membrane permeability, hormone secretion, bone growth, and muscle contraction. In future sessions, we are going to talk about how each function happens, how calcium helps for neuromuscular transmission, how it helps for bone growth, how muscle contraction happens. That.
Right. එතකොට කැල්සියම් වැඩි වෙන එකට කියන්නේ hypercalcemia නේ. hyper hypercalcemia. හරි ඒක අපි පස්සේ බලමු. ඊළඟට. acid base.
As I told you previously, we have to maintain this balance in iron levels. So when for this iron balance helps to maintain the acid base balance in our body. Okay. In chemistry, I think you have got a basic idea about how acid base balance happens, and you know the equations. Okay. Regulation of acid base, usually talk about how the regulation of H plus ions. It depends on respiration, kidney function, chemical functions, chemical buffers. So precise regulation of acid pH activity is necessary for peak enzyme activity. So each enzyme have a optimal pH value. So the maximum function of that enzyme happen in that regulated peak activity of pH. I think this is illustrated in this graph. So when this enzyme activities usually happens around a pH range. When the range is also decrease or increase, the activity can be changed. Okay. So these are the things you learned in chemistry. Okay, acid release hydrogen plus and bases absorb H plus. So I think you don't need to know the equations. I think you already learned that in chemistry. But so we usually take as the pH value normal range as 7.4. Okay. So when we have our body fluids act as a buffer, and it usually resists pH changes. So weak acid and conjugated base pair like this bicarbonate and H plus is released by H2CO3 like carbonic acid. So it, that molecule act as a buffer. And also when there is excessive carbon dioxide, and it can lead to acidosis. And when there is excessive bicarbonate, it can lead to alkalosis.
ඒකට ඇසිඩෝසිස් කියන්නේ මේ ඇසිඩ් ගතිය වැඩි වෙනවානේ. ඇසිඩ් ගතිය. ඒ කියන්නේ
Oh,
pH එක අඩු වෙනවා. එතකොට ඇල්කලෝසිස් කියන්නේ pH එක වැඩි වෙන. ඒ කියන්නේ හරි නේද? මට
oh
මතක
sir.
නැහැ. හරි. එතකොට මේකට සිංහල වචනයක් කියන්න දන්නවද? ඇසිඩෝසිස් මම දන්නේ නැහැ. ඇසිඩ් වැඩි වෙනවා කියලා කියන්නේ. ඇසිඩෝසිස්
ආම්ලිකතාව ඇසිඩෝසිස්, ඇල්කලෝසිස් භාෂ්මිකතාව.
එහෙම කරන මේවට මතක තියෙනවා. ආම්ලිකතාවය වැඩිවීම, රුධිරයේ ආම්ලිකතාවය වැඩිවීම, මේකේ බාෂ්මිකතාවය වැඩිවීම. හරි.
වැඩි
දැන්
වෙනවා.
ඊළඟට.
දැන් අපි මේක එක්සාම්පල් එකක් විදිහට ගමු. දැන් අපේ හුස්ම ගන්න වේගය වැඩි වෙනවා. එතකොට අපි හුස්ම ගන්න වේගය වැඩි වෙනකොට we usually excrete more carbon dioxide. ඒකට carbon dioxide excrete වුණාම අපේ blood එකේ තියෙන carbon dioxide level එක අඩු වෙනවා. එතකොට respiration එක වැඩි. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් panic attack එකක් වගේ ආව කියලා එක්සාම්පල් එකකට ගන්නකො. ඒකට ඔයාලා හුස්ම ගන්න වේගය වැඩි වෙනවනේ. ගොඩක් හුස්ම අරගෙන carbon dioxide level එක අඩු වෙලා අපේ H plus level එක අඩු වෙනවා. So when we get a panic attack, or we usually give a bag to ventilate. So අපි අර එක්ස්ක්‍රීට් කරන කාබන් ඩයොක්සයිඩ් ටික අර බෑග් එකේ ඇකියුමුලේට් වෙලා අපි ආයේ ඒ ටික ඉන්හේල් කරනවා. එතකොට තමයි අපි අර කරන අර quick and easy method for managing a panic attack වගේ. දැන් respiration එක අඩු වුණාම carbon dioxide increase වෙනවා. H plus එක වැඩි වෙලා blood එකේ ආම්ලිකතාවය වැඩි වෙනවා. Okay. හරි තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් මට මේ chat box එකට හරි දාන්න. මේ මෙකැනිසම් ටික ඔයගොල්ලෝ කොහොමත් කෙමිස්ට්‍රි වල ඉගෙන ගත්ත හින්දා මම ගොඩක්ම ඩීප් දැම්මේ නැහැ. ඔයාලට මතක නැත්නම් හරි මොන හරි ප්‍රශ්නයක් හරි තියෙනවා නම් දාන්න. In previous slide we talk about respiratory system, and usual respiratory system works within minutes. Okay. මේ process එක වෙන්නේ මිනිත්තු ගාණක් ඇතුලේ. ඒ වුණාට renal system එක it also acts as a buffer, but it can't act within minutes. It usually take within hours to days. It usually act by recovery of bicarbonate and excretion of H plus and ammonia. Okay. So when there is disorders of buffers, can the main mechanism වල ප්‍රශ්නයක් මොන හරි වුණොත් එහෙම එන්න පුළුවන් complications හතරක් තියෙනවා. They are respiratory acidosis, respiratory alkalosis, metabolic acidosis, metabolic ඇල්කලෝසිස්. ඒ කියන්නේ රෙස්පිරේටරි දැන් හුස්ම ගන්න එකේ වෙනසක් හින්දා එක්ක pH අගේ වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්, pH අගේ වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. and pH අගේ වැඩි. ඒ කියන්නේ ඇසිඩික් නම් ඒක රෙස්පිරේටරි ඇසිඩෝසිස්. and pH අගේ අඩු වුණොත් රෙස්පිරේටරි ඇල්කලෝසිස්. රෙස්පිරේටරි ඇල්කලෝසිස් කියලා මම එක්සැම්පල් එකකට කිව්ව පැනික් ඇටැක් එකක් ආවම අපි ගොඩාක් එක්ස්හේල් කරනවා. එතකොට අපේ බ්ලඩ් pH එක අඩු වෙනවා. එතකොට එන කම්ප්ලිකේෂන් එක රෙස්පිරේටරි ඇල්කලෝසිස්. and metabolic acidosis and metabolic alkalosis එන්න පුළුවන්. ඇඟ ඇතුළු වෙන metabolic ප්‍රශ්න හින්දා. එතකොට මේක ගොඩක් වෙලාවට metabolic acidosis and metabolic alkalosis manage කරන්නේ kidney එකේ. respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis manage කරන්නේ respiratory system එකේ.
ඒක මෙටබොලික් කියන්නේ මේ පරිවෘත්තියනේ. පරිවෘත්තිය කියන්නේ. හරිද? පරිවෘත්තිය නේද? හරිද ඒක? මෙටබොලික්.
ඔව්. ඇඟ ඇතුළේ වෙන දේවල් පරිවෘත්තීය ක්‍රියා. This is respiratory acidosis like simplified. දැන් මෙතන කාබන් ඩයොක්සයිඩ් වැඩි වෙනවනේ respiratory acidosis වල. එතකොට ඒකත් එක්ක ජලය water H2O එකතු වෙලා බයිකාබනේට් ලෙවල් එක වැඩි වෙනවා. එතකොට බයිකාබනේට් එක අර ෆික්ස් විදියට තියෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ. ඒක කන්ජුගේට් වෙනවා H+ and බයිකාබනේට් විදියට. එතකොට මේකෙදි කාබන් ඩයොක්සයිඩ් වැඩි වුණාම සිම්ප්ලිෆයි කරා H+ වැඩි වෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ respiratory acidosis pH level එක වැඩි වෙලා blood එක acidic වෙනවා. So opposite happens in respiratory alkalosis. Carbon dioxide අඩු වුණාම H+ උත් අඩු වෙනවා. So metabolic acidosis and metabolic alkalosis also happens in same mechanism. Just read about that. So I told you previously we usually take as 7.4 but දැන් අපේ මොන හරි value එකක් දෙනකොට අපි usually medical field එකේ අපි දෙන්නේ range එකක්. මොකද ඒ person ගේ age, sex අනුව ඒ හැමදේම අනුව ඒක වෙනස් වෙනවා. So in hemoglobin concentration එකත් අපි දෙන්නේ usually range එකක්. ඒ වගේ pH එකෙත් අපි normal value එකේ range එක ගන්නේ 7.35 to 7.45. දැන් ඔයාලා කල්පනා කරනවා ඇති ඇයි මේක අපිට ඕන වෙන්නේ කියලා. දැන් මොනවා හරි respiratory හරි පරිවෘත්තීය හරි මොන හරි problem එකක් වෙලා patient කෙනෙක් admit වුණා කියන්නකෝ. එතකොට දැන් අපි යාගේ අර blood gas එකක් බලනවා. එතකොට blood gas එක බලලා ඒකෙන් බලන්නේ අපි patient ගේ blood එකේ pH කොහොමද, carbon dioxide කොහොමද, මොනවා හරි cation anion අර අපි ඉස්සෙල්ලා ගොඩාක් cation anion කතා කරේ. ඔයාලට හිතෙන්නේ නැති මෙච්චර දේවල් වැඩක් නැහැ නේ. මොකටද මේ අපි මේ cation anion දැනගන්න ඕනේ කියලා. ඒ වුණාට අපි each concentration එක ඒ කියන්නේ කටපාඩම් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. ඔයාලා report එකේ range එක එනවා. ඒ එන range එක අනුව අපි manage කරගන්න දැනගන්න ඕනේ. patient කෙනෙක්ගේ ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් අපි ගමු එක්සාම්පල් එකකට sodium plus level එක අපි ඒක මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ නෑ just a simply fact කියලා හිතනවා. ඒ වුණාට දැන් වයසට යන්න යන්න මේ patients ලාගේ එහෙම anion disturbances එනවා. එතකොට දැන් එන ගොඩක් common problem එකක් තමයි sodium plus අඩු වෙනවා. ලුණු අඩුයි කියලා. එතකොට මේ patients ලාට අර සිහිය නෑ. අර වයසට යනකොට ගොඩක් අය සිහිය නැතුව එහෙම වගේ ඇඩ්මිට් කරන්නේ සිහියක් නෑ කියලා. එතකොට simply they got hyponatremia. ඒ කියන්නේ blood level එකේ තියෙන sodium plus අඩු වෙලා. එතකොට අපි usually blood gas report එකක් අරන් levels check කරලා බලලා ඒ අපි ඒක manage කරන්න ඕන. So each cation anion have an important role in our body. Okay. And carbon dioxide level එක ඒවා ඔක්කොම range එක අපි usually rough දැනගන්න ඕන. For ABG report, ABG කියන්නේ arterial blood gas report analysis කියලා වෙනම තියෙනවා. ඒක future session වලදී කතා කරමු අපි කොහොමද report එකක් කියවන්නේ, කොහොමද manage කරන්නේ ඒවා. මේක just a simplified version. ඔයාලා කොහොමද report එකක් ගත්තම pH මුලින්ම බලනවා pH CO2 බලනවා ඒකෙන්ම අපිට එන්න පුළුවන් diagnose කියන්නේ respiratory acidosis ද respiratory alkalosis ද what's the condition කියලා. ඒකට තමයි මේක නිකන් ඔයාලට just for a short review වගේ මේ slide එක දැම්මේ.
හරි එහෙනම් ඉවරයි නේද අපි session එක?